We recognize that the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society gathers on the land of the Western Abenaki people. We respect the Abenaki spiritual relationship to this land, and we seek to honor their living traditions. We hope to learn from them how we can respect Mother Earth and each other.
Good morning, and welcome to this Sunday morning service of the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. My name is Abby Sessions. I'm a member of this congregation, and this morning I serve as worship associate for a service in celebration of Passover, led by Pam Barenbaum, who's also a member of this congregation. Whether you come every Sunday, occasionally, or are with us for the very first time, we're glad to see you here at CVUUS. If this is your first time attending, please contact us so that we can share more about who we are and what we do and learn more about you. And please join us for Zoom coffee hour after the service. We at CVUUS find many ways to connect with one another in addition to our Sunday morning services. The best source of information on pathways to connection is the weekly blast, published via email on Wednesdays. One of our most important pathways to connection is our annual Canvas campaign, which takes place during the month of March, where we each pledge what we are able to support our activities for the following year. Here are our Canvas chairs, Carl Lindholm and Brett Millier, to tell us more about our annual Canvas.
Good morning, everyone. I am the reporter today, and I'm very happy to report that so far, we have raised $238,035 in our canvas. That is 68% of our goal. We have 53% of the pledge of the people who have pledged in the past, and new members have made pledges this year. Thank you so much. As I mentioned last week, and now there's a few more, 35 members of the congregation have made additional gifts, pledges on one-time pledges on behalf of people for whom the pandemic has been really difficult financially, and I'm very proud about that. I would just add that if you are in the category of people for whom the pandemic has been very, very difficult financially, don't be afraid to respond to your village leader or to one of us if we contact you. We've got you covered. That's the idea. We'd also love it if you could make a very small gift. Participation matters. We would love to feel everyone connected here through the canvas.
Okay. When we first started thinking about the canvas, we said, well, we need a theme, we need a logo. And so I think it was Brett came up. How about this? Remember this? See this? It's Bound for Joy. It's not, is it back? They see it back? No, yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Bound for Joy. And we thought it kind of suggested a train. You know, the train song, Woody Guthrie's This Train is Bound for Glory. We changed it to Bound for Joy. And we asked the poetry guy, Ted Shy, to write us some new lyrics for this song that is quite familiar. And he wrote us 10 new verses. They were spectacularly sung a few weeks ago at a service by Chris Prickett. Here are just 2 of those verses. Climb aboard our canvas train now, won't you? Climb aboard our canvas train, why don't you? Despite pandemic stress and strain now, our communal love remains now. Climb aboard our canvas train now, won't you? We will soon be all together, this train. In the dark or sunny weather, this train. This train can't wait to gather face to face the way we'd rather. This train will stay together, this train. So for those of you who have climbed aboard this train, thank you. For those still in the station, I hope you'll make a pledge. Either way, I'll see you on board. You can meet me in the club car. This is our last canvas pitch. And we'll leave you with a song by Connie Leach and Chris Prickett. We think it's a Bound for Love song. Uh-oh. That's
There's a reason for the sunshine sky, and there's a reason why I'm feeling so high. Must be the season when that love light shines all around us. So let your vision grab you deep inside and make your mission to live where love can't hide. You be a beacon through the dark of night with each other. Just let your love flow like a mountain stream, and let your love grow with the smallest of dreams, and let your love show, and you'll know what I mean. It's the season. Let your love fly like a bird on the wing, and let your love bind you to all living things, and let your love shine, and you'll know what I mean. That's the reason. So be a reason for making joy abound, and be a reason as we gather round to share each season and our gifts of heart all around us. And let that wonder open wide your space and bring you under its loving embrace. Feel joy's tinder as it warms your face. You can't hold back. Just let your love flow like a mountain stream, and let your love grow with the smallest of dreams, and let your love show, and you'll know what I mean. It's the season. Let your love fly like a bird on the wing, and let your love bind you to all living things, and let your love shine, and you'll know what I mean. That's the reason. Just let your love fly like a bird on a wing, and let your love bind you to all living things, and let your love shine, and you'll know what I mean. That's the reason.
For the call to worship. O Spirit of life and renewal, we have wintered enough, mourned enough, oppressed ourselves enough. Our souls are too long cold and buried, our dreams all but forgotten, our hopes unheard. We are waiting to rise from the dead. In this, the season of steady rebirth, we awaken to the power so abundant, so holy, that returns each year through earth and sky. We will find our hearts again and our good spirits. We will love and believe and give and wonder and feel again the eternal powers. The flow of life moves ever onward through one faithful spring and another and now another. May we be forever grateful. Alleluia. Amen.
Please join me now in reading the words for the lighting of the chalice. Out of the darkness, light. Out of the light, warmth. Out of the warmth, joy. Out of the joy, togetherness. May this flame hold us for the time we are here with one another.
Let us open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Let us open our minds to seek what is true. Let us open our hearts to love one another. And may we walk in peace. Let us open our hearts to see what is beautiful. Let us open our minds to seek what is true. Let us open our hearts to love one another. And may we walk in peace.
Good morning, everybody, especially all the UU kids out there. I'm going to talk to you guys about Passover. And so Passover is a holiday celebrated by Jewish people with their friends and family. And we celebrate with food and songs and storytelling. And the holiday celebrates the end of slavery. So a long time ago, the Jewish people were slaves in Egypt. And they were slaves for over 400 years. It's a lot of generations of people. So at Passover time, Jewish people remember how terrible it was to be slaves and how wonderful it was to be freed from slavery and how precious it is to have a new beginning in life. So the holiday is celebrated in the home with a special meal called a Seder. And I'm going to show you some of the things that we use for this special meal and some of the stuff that we eat. And to be honest with you, some of it is actually kind of gross. So at the meal, we use a Seder plate. This is my Seder plate, and you can see it's really beautiful. The colors, sort of a glare on it, but it's got doves on it to represent peace and flowers to represent spring. And then there's like these little dishes that go on top of the Seder plate, and you put ritual sort of symbolic foods in them. So I'm going to show you some of these foods and tell you what they mean. And so some of the foods represent really sad and difficult things, and some of the foods represent happy things. So to start off with, a little bit of horseradish. Now this stuff is pretty terrible. It makes your eyes water and you pretty much feel like your nose is on fire when you're eating it. And it's supposed to be bitter to remind us of the bitterness of slavery. So to feel bitter is like feeling sad and angry at the same time. And then we also have charoset, and I didn't make any to bring, but it looks like this. It's supposed to look like mortar, like if you were building a building in between the bricks, you would put mortar. So that's what the Hebrew slaves had to do in Egypt. They had to build buildings. But the haroset, it actually tastes pretty good. It's made with chopped up apples and nuts and dried fruit, and you mix it all together with wine and cinnamon. We also have we'll have a little tiny bowl of salt water, and the salt water represents the tears that our people cried when they were slaves, when they were so unhappy and they weren't free. And then we also have parsley, and this represents spring and new growth. And we actually dip the parsley into the salt water, and then we eat the salty parsley. And it represents, out of sadness and tears comes new life and new beginnings. We also have an egg that represents, again, new life and new beginnings. And all, animals tend to have their babies or in the springtime, because babies are kind of fragile. So you want them to be growing when it's warm. And then traditionally on the Seder plate, we put the roasted bone of a lamb. But vegetarians don't like to do that. So vegetarians will use a beet, because whenever you cook a beet and you slice into it, there's like red juice comes out that's kind of like blood. So we use that instead of a shank bone. And then this is a more recent addition to the Seder plate, an orange. This is only in the last few decades have we used an orange. And it's because a while back, there was this Jewish leader who didn't think that women should have leadership roles. So he said something like, well, a woman being a leader, that makes about as much sense as putting an orange on the Seder plate. So now, we do this, and it makes perfect sense to me. So we put an orange on the Seder plate. And then not on the Seder plate, but on the table is matzah. So this is a super flat bread. It looks like cardboard. It pretty much tastes like cardboard. This is matzah from last year, and it tastes the same. Stuff doesn't even go bad. It's really dry and crunchy. So we eat this, and we're not allowed to eat any bread during Passover, because whenever the slaves were freed, they started to pack up their things, but then the Pharaoh, who was like sort of the king enslaving them, changed his mind, and he sent an army after the Hebrew people, and they had to run for their lives. And so they grabbed the bread that was supposed to be rising, and they shoved it in their backpacks, and they just ran away. So eating this flat, unleavened bread reminds us what it must have been like to have to run for your life and not have time to prepare. And this is not a tradition that most people do, but I do, because I love frogs. And in the story of the escape from Egypt, God sent all these plagues to scare the Pharaoh into releasing the Jewish people. And one of those plagues was frogs. So frogs are raining down from the sky. And frogs are my favorite animal. So I have a whole collection of frogs. I have like this guy and this guy. And I actually decorate my Passover table with frogs. Everyone has a little frog next to their plate. And the frogs really actually get in the way of the meal, but it's fun to start off that way. So there's some fun parts of the Seder. Just being with friends and family is really fun, and telling the Passover story. And we use this book called a Haggadah to tell the story. And it's kind of fun. It's almost like being in a play where everyone takes turns reading and kind of playing different parts. Some people even use puppets to tell the story. And an interesting thing about the Passover meal is that you are allowed to slouch or lie down or even be on pillows. So normally at the dinner table, if you're slouching, your parents might tell you to sit up straight, but you're encouraged to slouch and be lazy at the table for Passover. And that's because we can do that now. We're free, we're comfortable. No one, is giving us orders, so that slouching kind of reminds us that we're free to do what we want to do. And then there's certain songs that we sing, and one of them called Dayenu. In fact, Ronnie's going to sing Dayenu later on in the service. It's this really upbeat, rousing song, and you can sing it at the top of your lungs, and you can bang the table and stomp your feet if you want to. Again, normally things we don't do at the dinner table, but for Passover we do. And Dayenu is really celebrating all the miracles that helped make us free. And there's certain things that only kids get to do at the Passover Seder. There's 4 questions that we ask every year. Like the first one is, why is this night different from all other nights? And actually the youngest child at the table gets to ask the 4 questions. Usually the older kids are the ones that get to do everything. But at Passover, the youngest kids have one of the most important roles. And then we take a little piece of matzah and you wrap it up in a napkin, and the grown-ups hide it somewhere in the house. And then the kids have to find it. And the grown-ups play hot and cold to tell the kids, you know, how close they're getting. So if they're going far away, they say, oh, you're getting cold, you're freezing. And then eventually, whenever you find the matzah wrapped up in a napkin, then you might get a little prize like a bookmark or a piece of chocolate or something. And then kids also get to open the door for Elijah. And Elijah is a prophet from the olden days. And we open the door to let Elijah into the home. We were inviting Elijah to come in. And Elijah represents a day when nobody will be sad and there's going to be peace everywhere. So of course, Elijah is not really a real person, but you open the door anyway. And then it has sort of like a spooky, like haunted house feeling where like you feel like someone's in the room with you. So those parts of the Seder are, you know, are really fun, and parts of them could even be a little bit silly, but there's really serious parts to the Passover meal as well. We take a break from celebrating our own freedom, and we think about all the people in the world who are bitter, people who feel sad and angry about their own situation. We remember how grateful we are to be free. And then at the Seder table, we talk about things that we might do to help other people become free, because we want everyone to have something to celebrate. So there's lots of organizations helping people, and we might talk at the table about how we could volunteer to help those organizations. Or if they're doing the work far away, maybe we could send them money so that they could keep on doing the good work that they're doing. So there's lots more to say about the holiday. And actually some people's Passover Seders go all night long, like literally, like people stay up all night. And I am definitely not going to make you do that right now. But I'm hoping that maybe next year I will see everybody at the Passover Seder that UU has typically every year. So it would be great to see everyone. And normally we end the Passover Seder with this sentence, next year in Jerusalem. And this year, everyone is saying next year in person. So that's all I have for you.
Thank you, Pam. That was wonderful. Each month we donate part of our offering to an organization whose work represents our values and principles in the wider world. This month, our offering is shared with an organization called Abnaki, Helping Abnaki, which helps preserve and promote Abnaki culture. I invite you to give in offering as generously as you are able. We've come to the place in our service where we have an opportunity to share milestones and passages, important events in our lives. I have received no milestones or passages, but always there are unspoken joys and concerns. We offer a silent space for meditation and prayer, a time for you to be in touch with what's on your heart and mind this morning. Our reading today is a poem called Magid, which Pam tells me means storyteller in Yiddish, by Marge Piercy. The courage to let go of the door, the handle, the courage to shed the familiar walls whose very stains and leaks are comfortable as the little moles of the upper arm. stains that we call a feast, a child's naughtiness, a loud blattering storm that slapped the roof hard, pouring through. The courage to abandon the graves dug into the hill, the small bones of children and the brittle bones of the old whose marrow hunger had stolen. The courage to desert the tree planted and only begun to bear. The riverside where promises were shaped, the street where their empty pots were broken. The courage to leave the place whose language you learned as early as your own, whose customs, however dangerous or demeaning, bind you like a halter you have learned to pull inside, to move your load. The land fertile with the blood spilled on it, the roads mapped and annotated for survival. The courage to walk out of the pain that is known into the pain that cannot be imagined, mapless, walking into the wilderness, going barefoot with a canteen into the desert, stuffed in the stinking hold of a rotting ship, sailing off the map into dragons' mouths. Cathay, India, Siberia, Goldene Medina, leaving bodies by the way like abandoned treasure. So they walked out of Egypt. So they bribed their way out of Russia under loads of straw. So they steamed out of the bloody, smoking charnel house of Europe on overloaded freighters, forbidden all ports. Of pain into death or freedom or a different painful dignity, into squalor and politics. We Jews are all born of wanderers, with shoes under our pillows, and a memory of blood that is ours raining down. We honor only those Jews who changed tonight, those who chose the desert over bondage, who walked into the strange and became strangers, and gave birth to children who could look down on them, standing on their shoulders for having been slaves. We honor those who let go of everything but freedom, who ran, who revolted, who fought, who became other by saving themselves.
Thanks, Abby. So I think you all know that Passover is basically telling the story of the book of Exodus in the Old Testament, celebrating the Hebrews' exodus from slavery in Egypt. And if you're like me, you can't help but picture these Cecil B. DeMille movie scenes with Charlton Heston playing Moses. You know, after all these years, the movie plays in my mind when I think about this story. You know, putting the baby Moses in the basket, floating him on the Nile, and then he's raised as a royal, finds out he was born to Hebrew slaves, and he tells the Pharaoh, you know, let my people go. Pharaoh says no. So God sends plagues like hail, locusts, boils, frogs. And then Moses parts the Red Sea with God's help, and the Hebrews escape while being chased by Pharaoh's army. You know, and just pause and consider, you know, we're in the midst of a plague right now. And, you know, reading the plagues used to feel so sort of distant from our experience. And this year, I think a lot of Passover Seders are talking about the current plague that we're in. So Passover is actually a really interesting holiday because it's always being reinvented. And it's where the past and the present and the future all collide in discussion. And mostly it's a story of rebirth, of leaving a narrow place. So the Hebrew word for Egypt is Mitzrayim, and the actual translation of Mitzrayim is a narrow place. So I want to talk about the past, future, and present with respect to this holiday. So we visit the past through the Seder meal and going through all the traditions and all the rituals. So I talked about the Seder plate in the Time for All Ages. And I mentioned the 4 questions. And we ask the 4 questions every year, even though we all know the answers. And we do the retelling of the story in great detail. Again, we all know the story, we've seen the movie, but we still tell the story, and we're required to tell the story. And when we tell the story, we tell it as if it just happened and we were all there. So there's things that we read in Haggadah that say, when I was a slave in Egypt. And we tell it from that frame of reference so that we never take freedom for granted. We don't want to feel too far removed from our slave, our ancestors in slavery. And the focus of this backward look through time is really on gratitude for all of the divine miracles of the past. And we sing this song Dayenu, which I mentioned in the Time for All Ages. And the word Dayenu means it would have been enough. So in this song, which Ronnie's going to show you a fantastic, rousing rendition of the song later on in the service, but it's really just a litany of gratitude for all of the steps along the way and all the miracles. And that song, by the way, is over 1,000 years old. So Passover also looks to the future with tremendous hope. In retelling the story of the Exodus, it's kind of interesting because we don't talk about what comes next. And what came after the escape from Egypt that's some pretty dark times for the Hebrews. They were wandering in the desert. They were starving. There was infighting, constructing of the golden idols, the golden calf. I mean, really some dark times, but we don't talk about that at the Passover Seder. The focus is really on liberation and preserving this idealistic vision of the future. So that last song that you just heard that Ronnie played, Eliyahu Hanavi, which means Elijah the prophet, it's got this real kind of yearning quality, and it's begging for a time of peace and the end of sorrow, and really focusing on that ideal vision of the future. And as I mentioned earlier, the Seder plate symbols are about new life and spring and new growth and new potential for all of us. And again, next year in person, we all have hope that next year we'll be doing this really differently. But the really interesting part of Passover and the real spiritual work is the focus on the present. Whenever you read those old Bible passages, God was always talking to us and we're talking to God, and, it wasn't considered unusual for you to say, hey, God talked to me and here's what God said. But in our modern times, sometimes, we feel very distant from some kind of creative spirit. And the focus of Passover today is really on social justice. Liberation from our modern day Egypt, our modern day Mitzrayim, or narrow place. What kind of new beginnings do we need? So even though the Seder contains these ancient rituals and 1,000-year-old songs, people are constantly adding new elements. It's very common now for people to read speeches by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as part of the Seder. And we use the Seder to cultivate empathy for all oppressed people and acknowledge present-day slavery. So things like human trafficking, forced child labor, indentured servitude, these are real terrible problems. In fact, there are more people enslaved today than at any point in human history. And Passover is an opportunity to engage with that, to cultivate empathy and to commit to taking action. But we also use Passover to think about how we are enslaving ourselves, creating a personal Mitzrayim unnecessarily. What is the narrow place that we need to exit from as individuals? Is it time? I know for me, this is a big one. I'm oppressing myself with my work calendar. So all those times when I don't make time to see a friend or take a hike or go on vacation, I've put myself into a narrow place, and that's something I've done to myself. Sometimes our Mitzrayim might be a pattern that we're stuck in our relationships with our family members or friends or coworkers, some kind of pattern that is restricting us from growing the relationship. Or we might be stuck in a pattern with our own identities, something that's preventing us from being our whole selves and being who we truly are. I think trans people feel this way. When they transition to being who they really are, they're escaping this narrow place that they were stuck in their identity. So I want to add some personal reflections about what I've been thinking about for Passover right now. And it's some connections to the Black Lives Matter movement and the anti-racist movement. And I think that actually Jewish people have been stuck in a narrow place in thinking about our identity as former slaves. This identity as being former slaves is really clashing with the white privilege that we're currently enjoying. And not all Jews identify fully as being white, and we've not always been considered white in this country even. And there are lots of Jews around the world who are not white, but just, in this country, and when you look at me, I clearly have a lot of white privilege in this society. And for me personally, I take the past slavery of my people as a fact. And then, of course, there was the Holocaust. And not that long ago, my people were enslaved in work camps and killed. And there are anti-Semitic acts going on all the time. And I've had the uncomfortable, very sad task of walking around Havara House with the Middlebury chief of police talking about how to make the building safe in an active shooter incident. And so it's, on the one hand, it's really hard for me to embrace the white privilege I have, and I don't want to be disconnected from the oppression that is real, that my people experience. But at the same time, I need to acknowledge that the overwhelming force in my daily life is my white privilege. So that's kind of like the narrow place that I'm in right now, of wanting to do the work of being an anti-racist, but not wanting to fully embrace a white identity. And I wonder if, dwelling on stories of oppression that I relate to is somehow limiting me in doing that. So that's my narrow place, and I'm trying to see my way out and do the work. And I hope I'm moving in the right direction. And I hope I make it there eventually. So, next year in Jerusalem. So that's all I have. And I appreciate your listening, and I've enjoyed the opportunity to share this with you. And it's helped me to engage with a holiday I've celebrated my whole life, but engage with it in a new way. So thank you.
When Israel was in Egypt's land, let my people go, oppressed so hard they could not stand. Let my people go down, Moses went down in Egypt land, tell Pharaoh, let pressed so hard they could not stand. Let my people go. 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 Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. When Israel was in Egypt's land, let my people go. Let my people go. Let my people go. Let my
I have a benediction for you. Sorrow will one day turn to joy. All that breaks the heart and oppresses the soul will one day give place to peace and understanding, and everyone will be free.
Die, die, hey nu, die, die, hey nu, die, die, hey nu, die, nu, die, nu, die, die, hey nu, die, die, hey nu, die, die, hey nu, die, nu, die, nu. Die, die, hey nu, die, die, hey nu, die, die, hey nu, die, nu, die, nu, die, die, hey nu, die, die, hey nu, die, die, hey nu, die, nu, die, nu. Die, die, hey nu, die, die, hey nu,